3 hours, a notary arrives with papers that erase my house. My phone is gone. This door just clicked twice. They call it wellness. I call it a lock. "Lori, you're safe here," my niece says through the wood. Safe. Funny word. It hides sharp edges. This is a cabin with rules. No phone, no sugar, no arguments. And one big plan. Mine. Starts at 4 p.m. I'm Lorraine Whitaker, 67. 30 decades counseling kids who survived worse than rumors. I know the sound of coercion when it smiles. On the table, 2 forms, durable power of attorney and healthcare POA, and one sentence that should scare any adult. Agent may convey real property by any instrument deemed convenient. Not on my porch. I check the windows, painted shut. I find a putty knife, hope in metal. I lift the sash, fresh air, and a man's hand slides it closed from the outside. First click, second click, lid on the pot. At 4 o'clock, a notary will want my signature. At 4:30, witnesses will want the truth. I tuck a tiny plan in my pocket, a phrase only my people know. The lilacs are late this year. If I say that, phones ring, doors open, cameras roll. So write this down with me. This is not wellness. This is a trap. And I am not prey. Ready? Let's rewind to the first sound that told me everything. The second click. I don't hear the key until I hear the second click. The first is a polite hotel room click, the kind that says, "Enjoy your stay." The second is heavier, final, like a lid settling on a pot. It moves through the cedar of the cabin door and into the bones of my hand pressed against it. "Lori, you're safe here," my niece calls through the wood. Safe. Funny word. It hides sharp edges. The porch boards creak. Someone, Tyler, by the weight of the steps, walks away. Tires chew gravel. The car dwindles into the trees until the only sound is the hum of insects falling reports on the late afternoon. I look at my empty hands. No phone, no keys, no purse. The only thing I have is the spiral notebook I grabbed out of habit from my tote when Sienna held out both hands and told me to surrender my screens. She waited with the patience of someone who gets paid by the hour. Camila smiled a bright, practiced smile and said it was for my own good. And I let them take my phone because you don't imagine the people you love as thieves. My name is Lorraine Whitaker, 67. 32 years as a school counselor at Bloomfield High in southeastern Ohio. I have a box in my attic full of thank you notes written in pencil and glitter pen, some misspelled in ways that make me miss the students who wrote them. I raised my niece Camila from the day my sister didn't come home, when black ice turned the interstate into a rumor of where you meant to go. Camila used to fall asleep on my couch with a scholarship letter pressed to her chest like a heat pack. She called me Thea when she wanted to be sweet and Aunt Lori when she wanted to be understood. 3 days, she said last week, over quinoa bowls at the new place on Maple where everything tastes faintly like virtue. Just 3 days, Aunt Lori. No phone, no stress, no spiraling. Reset. Reset what? I asked, because a counselor's job is 1,000 versions of that question. Grief, she said quickly, then softer. And the house. Tyler came along like a YouTube thumbnail come to life. Tight t-shirt, square jaw, the calm of a man who thinks ceilings should be white and mine should be too. He flips houses on TikTok, before and after shots with roller worship and granite worship and leverage worship. He calls me old school with a grin that suggests I'm a character in his content. The first time he visited my farmhouse, he put his hand on my kitchen counter and said, "They don't make wood like this anymore," in a tone that meant it belongs somewhere else. Sienna is a wellness coach, which means her voice always sounds like a towel warmed on a radiator. She met us at the cabin with green juice in mason jars and a list of rules written in loopy lettering. Technology fast, full surrender, choose softness. She asked for my phone the way a priest asks for confession. If you want the medicine to work, you can't keep a line to the noise. I don't keep it to the noise, I said, and showed her my phone case. Camila's prom photos tucked behind the plastic. Sienna smiled at it the way you smile at a child's drawing, fond, but ready to throw it away when she thinks you're not looking. The rules were, according to Sienna, daily movement, breathwork, guided journaling, no caffeine, no sugar, no avoidance. When we take the sugar away, she cooed, we notice what we were sweetening. I notice this door. I notice my breath. 4 in, 6 out. I've taught it 1,000 times and it still works. I turn away from the door. The cabin is a tidy performance of rustic. Knotty pine walls, a braided rug in front of a stone fireplace, a landscape print of Hocking Hills that you could buy with a coupon at a crafts store. The kitchen has a French press and no coffee, a pantry of chia packets and seaweed crisps, and a single can of black beans that looks as old as my first day of school shoes. There's a ceramic bowl full of river rock stamped with small words. Breathe, release, trust. I put the one that says trust in my pocket because irony keeps you warm. It is a kindness of the place that there is a landline by the fridge. It is a cruelty of the place that it is dead. I pick up the receiver and hear the kind of silence that has been quarreling for years. In the drawer beneath it, I find rubber bands, a stack of printed consent forms, and a notary stamp pad inked and ready. The stamp pad is a shock. It turns the air in the kitchen heavier, like a storm looked up from its book and remembered us. I set my spiral notebook on the table and make a list. Things I have: a notebook, a carpenter's pencil from the cabin desk, the river rock in my pocket, a refillable water bottle someone left in the mudroom, and a brain that learned to make maps when men forgot theirs. Things I don't: my usual degree of dignity. I walk the cabin perimeter like a woman checking a fence line. The living room windows are screwed shut from the outside. The bedroom window is painted shut from forever. The back door has a deadbolt and a slide lock that would keep bears out and mothers in. The bathroom window looks less ambitious. Its paint is cracked like an old seam. Under the sink, I find a putty knife, the kind of honesty Sienna didn't mean to provide. I climb onto the clawfoot tub, wedge the blade beneath the window sash, and pry. The right corner lifts with a groan. Flakes of paint dust the windowsill like old snow. I work the knife a little, then more. The sash gives, grudgingly, like a person who knows they're wrong but won't say it. I slide the window up high enough to smell wet leaves and someone else's fire. The porch is beneath this window, and beyond the porch is a gravel pad where the car sat. I tuck the spiral in my waistband, the rock in my sock, and angle a shoulder into the gap. My head clears the sill in time to see Tyler standing on the other side, holding a canvas bag of kale in control. He smiles up at me the way a contractor smiles at a homeowner when the homeowner thinks drywall can bear a miracle. "Safety hazard," he says quietly, and slides the window down from his side. It lowers with no effort at all. The latch clicks. The second click again. The lid. I step off the tub and set the putty knife on the sink. In the mirror, I look like the kind of woman people call strong to avoid calling alone. He and Sienna speak through the door while they eat salads on the deck, forks against bamboo bowls, the sound of clean intentions. Camila's voice comes soft as a washcloth. Just talk with us, okay? It's supposed to be gentle. Open the door, I say. After lunch, Tyler says, so we can all be adults. Adults, I repeat, because sometimes a word needs to be reminded of itself. When they finally open the door, the first polite click, the second heavy one, the lid lifting. I step off the tub and set the putty knife on the sink. In the mirror, I look like the kind of woman people call strong to avoid calling alone. He and Sienna speak through the door while they eat salads on the deck, forks against bamboo bowls, the sound of clean intentions. Camila's voice comes soft as a washcloth. Just talk with us, okay? It's supposed to be gentle. Open the door, I say. After lunch, Tyler says, so we can all be adults. Adults, I repeat, because sometimes a word needs to be reminded of itself. When they finally open the door, the first polite click, the second heavy one, the lid lifting. I step out the tub and stand at the cedar table like a polite hostage. The deck overlooks a slope of oak and maple and the glint of a creek you'd miss if you didn't listen. I can see a hawk worrying the air. I think of my father on Buckhorn Creek teaching me how to string a trot line. You don't need a pole if you understand the habits of the fish, he said. And my 8-year-old hands were sure I'd never learn the shape of hungry. Tyler lays a manila folder on the table like communion. He says, 2 documents, durable power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. Standard stuff. You keep control, we help when you can't. I can, I say. It is unusual how much truth can fit into 2 words. Today, he says, smiling the way a person smiles when they know what month your mortgage is due. Sienna's voice floats in on a eucalyptus breeze. Think of it as creating space for support. We're inviting ease. Camila is trying to cover a crack with a dish towel. It's peace of mind, she says, repeating the phrase like a charm that will finally work if she likes it enough. I just don't want to fight anymore. I pick up the top sheet. It is crisp, professionally vague, in all the places a person might prefer clarity. There is a clause that reads, agent may convey real property by any instrument deemed convenient. And the hair rises at the back of my neck the way it does when seniors tell you they'll be fine after graduation. Colleen's notary stamp is listed on the last page. Colleen, 4 o'clock, Tyler says in the tone of someone who has already called her. Slide them back under, I say. I'll read. I won't sign in the dark. We're not in the dark, he says quickly. We're in daylight. Daylight and the truth aren't the same thing, I say. Old school. I take the folder inside with me, sit cross-legged on the braided rug, and read every line with a pencil in my hand like I am stitching a wound. The language is precise where it needs to be, blurry where it should be precise. I think of Camila at 5, with grape juice on her chin, insisting her doll told her secrets in the night. I think of Camila at 12, sitting on my office floor asking if girls who love girls have to move away. I think of Camila at 17, in a cap and gown, pointing at a sea of faces she didn't need to see to know where mine was. And I think about last Tuesday, when a notary named Colleen left a voicemail. "Hi, Miss Whitaker, I'm confirming the quit claim signing for Friday at 2. Oh, I'm sorry, I think this is the wrong number." It was a wrong number, right intention kind of call that slides under doors you didn't know were there. I put the papers back on the deck with pencil lines around the phrases that need a spine. "We'll need to strike and add," I say. "I'll initial." "It's boilerplate. We can adjust later." "We add now," I say, "or we don't add at all." He stretches his smile to cover the distance between us. "Let's wait for Colleen. I like having an adult in the room." By 3:30, I have walked the cabin enough to know where it hides things. There's a motion camera on a shelf, Sienna's content machine, blinking patience. I pop the SD card out and tuck it into the back cover of my spiral. There is a Wi-Fi router in the loft blinking hello like a small lighthouse. The password is on a post-it under Sienna's keyboard. S1ENNA @SHADES. There is a smart speaker I don't trust and a carbon monoxide detector I do. The cabin tablet is logged into Sienna's business account because entrepreneurs are often both meticulous and careless. I open the browser. I open her webmail. I type one sentence to 6 people I have learned will pick up when I ask for something big. If I say the lilacs are late this year, start the plan. And from the library, Coach Rivera, J.J. Harrow at the Cincinnati Enquirer, who once traded me 3 questions for a tip about a scholarship scandal, May at Adult Protective Services, Dr. Lake, my wool and August lawyer, Pastor Ruth, who does not bother with metaphors when a simple no will do. I schedule the messages to send at 4 p.m., when the notary is due. I do not know the plan yet. I know the people. That is enough. At exactly 4, a Subaru pulls onto the gravel. Colleen is younger than I expected. Hair in a practical knot, tote bag like a portable desk. She steps onto the deck and looks at the door first. "Miss Whitaker," she calls, "we'll do this by the book." "She's in there," Tyler says, gesture wide and reasonable. We kept the door shut for wellness boundaries. Colleen's eyes flick to the lock. "Unlock the door," she says. "After we get set up," Sienna says, smiling wide enough to show intention. "It's important to unlock the door," Colleen repeats, and I like her a little. The first click, the second. Air moves. The lid lifts. I step out with my spiral, my pencil, and the river rock in my sock. We sit at the table like a meeting nobody wanted. Colleen lays out forms. "State your name for the record," she says, and the formality feels like a gift. "Lorraine Whitaker," I say. And before we proceed, since we're on a porch and the wind edits memory, use my camera. I set Sienna's tablet against a picture and angle it to point at our hands, so no one needs to remember this wrong. Tyler starts to protest, but Colleen nods. "Works for me." She looks at Tyler's manila folder. "You emailed me 2 versions, but this is a 3rd. Tyler laughs, like that's adorable. We cleaned up language. I read. I hold up the copy with pencil stitches. Page 7, the line about any instrument deemed convenient is not a line I'm signing. Strike any, write properly noticed deed with independent counsel present. And on page 9, add a 60-day waiting period before any transfer on death deed with notice to 3 named parties. And Coach Rivera, J.J. Harrow, initial. "Miss Whitaker," Tyler says, "we can tidy later." "No," I say, "we add now or we don't add at all." Colleen watches, impassive, a notary in the eye of a small storm. She says, "If she wants to add, you add, or she doesn't sign." It would have been in Tyler's best interest to keep his mouth still. He says, Kim, we can't hold the contractors another month. If we don't flip that farmhouse before the balloon hits, we're underwater. You know this. Silence lands the way a hawk does, precision and shadow at once. Camila looks at me with a pleading I recognize from 100 kids caught between a person they love and the version of that person they've been asked to accept. I say, the lilacs are late this year. It is code and memory at once. Camila and I charted the lilacs this spring after my sister died. We wrote the first bloom date on a calendar like we could trust something to keep its promise. Camila's mouth opens and closes and stays closed. I push the papers back to Tyler. We're done. Colleen packs her tote without fuss. If you want to proceed later, Miss Whitaker, call me directly. She holds her card so the tablet catches the number. I mirror the action with the steadiness I don't entirely feel. After she leaves, Sienna makes a sound that could be a sigh or a warning. Tyler takes a lap around the porch and around his own temper and disappears inside. Camila lingers. Aunt Lori, I thought this would be easier if you weren't so scared. I'm not scared, I say, and it's the truest thing all day. I'm angry. I leave it there because you don't have to burn a bridge to refuse to cross it. The cabin landline rings at 4:30. It doesn't ring so much as remember how. Whitaker residence? I say, counselor polite. Miss Whitaker? Mae from Adult Protective Services. Are you safe? I am now, and my hand shakes against the receiver because the body likes to celebrate when it can. 10 minutes later, the cabin tablet dings with an email from JJ. Subject, sources/notes, priv. Call if you want this on or off record. He lists past cases in the soft language the law uses for hard acts. He includes 3 names of women who had nieces who loved them in a way that looked like paperwork. He writes, if you tell me not to run it, I won't. If you tell me to run it, I won't soften it. I admire men who understood once and kept understanding. Dr. Lake's paralegal pings me a DocuSign. I asked for it 6 months ago and didn't sign it because I was still pretending blood understands gratitude. It is a revocation of all prior powers of attorney, a new will routing everything to the Buckeye Girls Scholarship Trust with a 12-word mission statement I wrote at my kitchen table between a pot roast and choir practice. No girl waits for permission to become who she already is. I signed with my fingertip on Sienna's tablet. The signature looks like a small river finding its way downhill. Sienna appears in the doorway holding mugs that smell like bark. Rishi, she says, for calming. I don't need calming, I say. I need honesty. Honesty, she repeats, the way people repeat words they're about to put in a different sentence. This is about love. Families have to make brave decisions. I took your phone, I say. That wasn't brave, it was convenient. She opens her mouth and closes it like a soft door. Tyler's footsteps speak for her. He comes back with a metal toolbox and the look of a man prepared to move through any barrier with the right bit. Lori, he says, and my name in his mouth sounds like a crowbar. We're past reasonable. He sets the toolbox on the kitchen island and opens it. On top, a portable fingerprint pad, a camera, blue nitrile gloves. Underneath, a slim lock, pasp, a bag of screws, a battery drill. This is illegal, I say. Only if someone cares, he says. Someone cares, I say, and my voice feels like a taut rope. Camila looks like a girl who's lost something she didn't know she dropped. Ty, she says, pleading. New lock, he tells Sienna. Cam, take Lori to the bedroom while we cool off. Camila, I say, and she looks at me with a face I have seen every day of my life since the day my sister died. She flinches. Tyler fills the doorway between us because control is the furniture he likes best. Headlights sweep the crease at 5:20. It isn't a cruiser. It is Anne from the library in her beige Camry with a tote bag that says, "Ask me about books." She knocks like a neighbor, then steps back like a witness. Behind her, doors close and open with agency. A black SUV follows. State troopers, not the sheriff. May learned something about cousins and elections and wrote it down. "Good afternoon," one of the troopers says, stepping onto the deck with a pace measured in calm outcomes. "We had a wellness call." "Wellness," I say, tasting the word like a coin. "How kind." Tyler and his drill slow in the doorway. "Officers, this is private property," he begins. But the trooper is already reading a script the community wrote over years of trying and failing and trying again. With a report of potential elder exploitation, unlawful restraint, and attempted coercion. "Miss Whitaker," the other trooper says, eyes on mine and not on my age, "do you want to be here?" "No, but I want to finish something first." I pick up the tablet and tap the video that uploaded itself at 4:30 because I told it to. The deck appears on screen. Our hands. The forms. Tyler's line about the balloon payment and being underwater. My pencil lines around phrases thin as lies. Colleen's business card angling toward the camera like a safe harbor. "This is my consent," I say. Tyler puts the drill down like a hot pan. Sienna opens her mouth to offer everyone's inner child. Camila sits on the top stair and cries like a faucet set to drip. The trooper's face doesn't change, and I like that about him. He asks if I need medical attention. I say I need my dignity back, and he says they can't write that in a report, but they understand. They take statements. Anne writes times and words and looks and who stood where with the seriousness librarians reserve for preserving what will be asked about later. The troopers ask Tyler to wait with them at the SUV. He looks smaller away from the porch. Sienna goes very still, a deer who thinks she is invisible. Camila asks if I will ever forgive her in a voice that sounds like bedtime before she learned to pretend. "I will believe you," I say, "when you give me something to believe." They leave with a promise to call. They leave with a copy of the video file on a thumb drive the trooper pulls from his pocket like a miracle, and JJ assures me through the tablet that miracles are just facts prepared in advance. Anne stays. She makes tea out of something a person could possibly call mint if she's generous. She asks if I want to sleep in her guest room, and I tell her I'll sleep here because I earned this air. The night is the kind of loud the woods keep for company. A barred owl carries the news from one ridge to another until everyone knows it. I sleep on the couch with my spiral under my cheek. In the morning, the cabin smells like humid wood and the moral smoke that lingers after a fire you meant to start. Sienna texts me on the cabin tablet because she is not as meticulous as she hopes. She writes, "I'm sorry it escalated. I wanted grace and clarity for all of us." She includes a link to breathwork video. I write back a single sentence. "I prefer oxygen and truth." May calls at 9. "We are opening a case," she says. "You'll get a packet. Do you feel safe at home?" "I will," I say, and I mean it like a decision. "Also, I'm planting lilacs." She chuckles softly, and I love her for understanding something without asking it to wear a name tag. Dr. Lake files the revocation and the new will that sends my house and my small savings toward girls who need glasses and gas money and permission slips for the life they are already ready to live. He reminds me, in a voice like a coat, that I can say no to anyone at any volume I choose. He mails me copies I will keep in a drawer that is not for recipes. JJ sends a list of questions the editor will ask if I say, go. Dates, times, whether I want my street name masked, whether I want my face photographed at my best angle, or my truest one. He reminds me that the internet doesn't love women who refuse to bleed on command. He promises me he won't make me his content. I tell him to run the piece without adjectives, and he says he doesn't do adjectives, only verbs and nouns. On Monday, the county prosecutor writes a press release that calls things what they are without putting its hand on my shoulder. The release uses phrases like alleged and pending investigation, but in between those words, I can hear the other ones. The piece runs on Tuesday. JJ calls it the wellness weekend. My face is in shadow because I asked. The photograph shows my hands on a fence post because my life is more hands than eyes. The comments are what comments are. Some people say families should fix things quietly. Some people say families should be outlawed. A woman in Zanesville writes, "My niece does breath work and I think she's great, but also maybe she can stop telling me my blood pressure is because of capitalism." I laugh like a woman with a voice back in her throat. The sheriff's office releases a bland paragraph, and 2 days later, the state troopers release a nicer one. Mae stops by on a Wednesday with a packet and a thermos of coffee. She pours into my old mug like a friend. She sits at my kitchen table and goes through the checklist like it was written for people who think checklists are for other people. "Any other concerns?" she asks. And there is a second where I want to say I am lonely in a way that makes me set out 2 plates for breakfast and then put one away. I tell her the truth that fits inside the time we have. "I'll call if I need to," I say. She looks around my kitchen and nods like women nod when they see a room that will survive. Pastor Ruth comes with cookies I did not ask for, and a folder of contractor estimates I did. "You're not moving," she says before I can offer lemonade, "so we fix the roof." "I am a blunt instrument, Ruth," I say. "I am a scalpel," she corrects. "I cut away infection and leave what heals." Anne labels 3 banker boxes with my handwriting because it looks more permanent. Documents for Dr. Lake. Scholarship trust. Things Camila might want if she becomes a person who can want them rightly. She puts the last box in my hall closet and says the closet looks like a sensible woman lives here. Camila does not come the first week. She texts a flurry of apologies on day 2, and I can see each sentence straining to be the right one. I write back, "When you are ready to be honest about the choices you made, I'll be here at my kitchen table." She writes, "That's not fair," and deletes it. I know this because she sends it again and then deletes it and then sends, "I'm trying." I write, "Then stop trying and start telling the truth." On day 9, she shows up in a car that is not new and does not smell like leather. She has a labor law pamphlet and a bus schedule tucked under her arm and eyes that look like the night before a test where you already know the material and still want to throw up. "Can we talk?" she asks on my porch, soft as the first day of school. "We can talk," I say. That is not the same as me agreeing. "I know," she says, and I watch her mouth choose which way to go. "I lost my job. Not because of you, because of what I did. The clinic doesn't want anyone on staff who thinks taking someone's phone is wellness." "You didn't take my phone. You asked someone to. That's a different kind of coward." "I know," she says again. She looks past me into my kitchen the way people look into churches whose doors stand unlocked because a person who isn't tired opened them. "I left Tyler. He left me first. He left when the comments got ugly, but then I left the part of me that looked at you and saw a key instead of a woman. That's the part of the sentence that matters," I say. "I got a job at the co-op. It's not glamorous. I stock produce and tell old men where the almond butter is, and sometimes I want to scream into a bag of sweet potatoes, but it feels like I'm not lying to anybody." She looks down at her shoes. "I came to ask if I could use your hose to wash my car. The co-op parking lot charges for water. The hose is yours. The house is not. She didn't come to ask for the house, and her voice is so small I almost hate myself for what I have to do next. I know that part of me is dead now. I came to ask you to tell me what kind of person you need me to become to have a place in your life again. You ask me as though my standard is a hoop, but it's a door. You open it, you walk through, you stay in the room when the air gets hot. She nods, like a child nods, when she stands very still so the doctor can put a Band-Aid on a shot she earned. I can do that, she says. We'll see if you can, I say. We go to the side of the house where the spigot sticks out like an elbow. She turns the handle like it has a language, and the hose snakes and coughs and then offers a strip of cold clear. She aims it at the car from a distance, like a person who doesn't yet trust herself to hold the thing tightly and not break it. I sit on the porch and watch a world that is still here because I am still here. The lilacs I planted along the fence line last month are mostly leaves, but there is one tuft of purple on the Miss Kim in the corner by the mailbox. I planted them late because I was busy surviving. This year, they'll bloom late because that's what late things do. They still bloom. At night, the house settles like a person who has been waiting to relax until the other person leaves. I open windows, I let in air. The refrigerator hums with a competence that calms me more than any person telling me to choose softness. On the kitchen table, there is a list of girls from Bloomfield High who wrote to thank me 5 years after they graduated because some things you don't know how to name until you have a lease in your own name. I write a check to the trust for an amount that would have been my new gutters and feel a kind of smugness that deserves to survive. A week later, I attend a fundraiser at the Civic Center because I have a pie recipe and a stubborn streak. May is there in a blouse, the color of confidence, passing out pamphlets that teach people how to ask better questions. JJ shows up late and stands in the back and doesn't say hi because he understands that not everything public needs to be personal. Pastor Ruth wins the pie eating contest by not entering and instead selling slices, $2 at a time, to boys who needed to say sorry with their allowance money. Coach Rivera buys a pie and leaves it on the table with a note that says, "For the girls who think nobody notices." Anne puts a flyer on the bulletin board about adult literacy classes and then takes it down to replace it with a better printed one because she is who she is. Back at the cabin, because yes, we return once, like a woman returning to the room where she decided she wouldn't die that day, I stand on the deck and put my hand on the cedar railing. The door is unlocked now. The landline works because, as it turns out, the wire was loose, and the person who used to do maintenance for Sienna left for a job that paid in more than certainty. A new sign hangs above the kitchen sink that says, "Dishes are a kind of prayer," which is nicer than full surrender. Sienna sold the cabin to a retired couple who keep bees and don't talk about breath work unless they're out of it and climbing a hill. "Why did you want to come back here?" Anne asks, and I laugh because it's a fair question from a woman who keeps different books on different shelves. "To see if it shrank or if I grew." "And?" she asks. "It's both," I say. "That's the trick with monsters. Sometimes they go back to being furniture after you name them." Tyler pleads to something quieter than felony and louder than decent. He pays a fine the size of a small truck and does community service the size of a weekend and starts a YouTube channel called Redemption Renos because men like Tyler love 3 things: alliteration, absolution, and ambient lighting. I don't watch it. The algorithm tries to show me his face every few days, and I teach it that I'm busy. Sienna moves to Asheville, according to rumor, and opens a studio called Stillness House, which is funny to me because the stillness she sells comes with a monthly membership. She posts photos of her dog doing downward dog and writes long captions about boundaries visible as succulents. Sometimes I wonder if she remembers the second click of the lock. Sometimes I remind myself it doesn't matter if she does. Camila shows up once a week to bring me produce at cost. We did not talk about forgiveness because the word floats and the work sinks.
We talk about the way customers pretend they like bitter greens when what they want is a bag of grapes. We talk about the county fair. We talk about her friend Leela, who wants to go back to school for nursing now that her ex isn't using her shifts as a map to her fear. Camila does not ask for money. I do not offer. She stays when the air gets hot. She changes the subject when I let her, which is a kind of obedience I can admire at my age.
In August, I sit on my back steps with a glass of something cold and watch the light get that late summer thickness you can hold a fork in. My neighbor's boy rides by on a red bike with a baseball card clipped to the wheel to make the sound of speed. He waves with his whole arm. I wave back with mine. From the kitchen comes the sound of the kettle I left on the stove to remind myself there is tea to be had if I want it. I go inside and turn the burner off and leave the kettle on the cool stove to hum itself quiet. I think of the girls whose names are on the scholarship check. I imagine them in dorm rooms with cheap posters and better ideas. I imagine one of them sitting across from a counselor saying, "I need help and I'm asking," and the counselor saying, "I heard you the first time." I imagine hands on pencils. I imagine sticky notes on mirrors. I imagine a girl writing down her first budget and not crying because she has enough. The mailbox creaks. I go down the drive and pull out a stack of flyers and a letter addressed in a hand I don't recognize. Inside is a card with a drawing of a fence and a single sentence. "Thank you for leaving the gate unlocked." There is no signature. I put it on the kitchen table with the others like it, and it looks like the only centerpiece I have ever needed. Autumn comes on like a coat slid over shoulders. The air from the field smells like cut hay and everything that will return to it. The lilacs go dull, and I let them, because not everything needs to glow all the time. The house creaks. The stairs complain. The porch waits for boots. I move through these rooms like a person who owns her life the way a person owns a song, by singing it out loud, even when no one else is listening. On an afternoon when the sky remembers how to be blue, Camila knocks and then doesn't wait, because she is and will always be my niece. She carries a shoebox like it contains a small animal. "Found these," she says, setting it on the table. Inside are photos from the box in the attic that bled into a box under her bed years ago. Camila at 5 with grape juice on her chin. Camila at 12 with a cake we made that slouched to one side like honest things do. Camila at 17 pointing at a sea of faces and saying, "There you are," without looking. "I remember this day," she says, touching the edge of the graduation photo. "I remember thinking I could see you even if you weren't there, that you were the place." I wanted to be. "I want to be a place for somebody," she says, and there is a brave in her voice I have been waiting to hear. Not today, not soon, but someday, not by trapping, but by being so steady they can feel it from far away. That is a good kind of wanting, I say. We sit and eat apples with peanut butter and talk about nothing and everything the way people talk when they have done the worst of the talking already. She asks if she can take the photo of her with the crooked cake. I tell her to take 2 in case one needs to live in a kitchen drawer for emergencies. She tucks them into her bag the way you tuck a letter into a pocket you hope won't lose it. She stands at the door and hesitates. She says, "Aunt Lori, do you ever think about that weekend and wish it didn't happen?" I think about that weekend and wish we had been different people then, but we weren't. So I am grateful for the people we get to be now. She nods like she feels the shape of that sentence against her tongue and doesn't hate it. "Okay," she says. And the word lands like a small, excellent promise. After she leaves, I go out to the fence line to pull a few weeds because it's the kind of job that answers to nobody.
The grass is a little high, the wood is a little old, the lilacs are old leaves and new hope. Across the road, a hawk leans into the air the way it did the day a notary put a pen on my porch and everything changed. I think of the second click of the lock, and the second click of the lid, and the second part of my life I almost handed to someone else.
I am angry some days. Anger is a clean fuel. It burns hot and brief and then asks you what you plan to do with the heat. I am also tired some days. Tired is a kind of fact. You slide it across the counter to the person across from you, and they don't argue with it because it is heavy and sits there. And I am also fine. Fine is not a dishonest word if you use it like a cloak when you need one to get to the car. I am not afraid. I am the woman who signed her name and meant it. I am the woman who told a girl she loved to stop trying and start telling the truth. I am the woman who wrote a check to a trust and planted lilacs that will bloom late some years and still bloom. At night, before I turn off the lamp, I open my spiral notebook and write down 3 lines, the way I used to ask my students to do when they said they had nothing to say. Today, I kept the door unlocked from myself. Today, I said no and meant it like a yes to me. Today, the lilacs smell like a promise that does not mind being late. The house settles. The kettle hums quiet on the cool stove. Somewhere up the road, a boy on a red bike counts out loud how many times he can go no hands before the hill ends. I picture him tipping forward into gravity and then pulling up, palms open, chest out, like a person who trusts the invisible. I think of myself placing my hands on the air and finding it holds. I close the notebook. I put the rock that says trust back in the ceramic bowl with the others because I don't need to carry it in my pocket to know where it is. Morning will come. I will make coffee loud enough to wake the curtains. Anne will call to ask if I need anything, and I will say yes to a ride to the hardware store. Pastor Ruth will text a photo of a pie with a caption that says, "For girls who need permission," and I will write back, "They don't," and she will send a heart and also bring me a pie. May will send me a link to a training session for volunteers who want to learn what to do when a neighbor says, "I think something isn't right." JJ will send me an update full of verbs and nouns. Dr. Lake will send me a bill that costs less than the advice, and I will argue with him, and he will let me win because some men know where mercy belongs. Camila will send a picture of a girl at the co-op holding a scholarship packet with both hands like a heavy bird and write, "She cried at the part about gas money." And I will sit down and cry with the relief of a person who almost didn't get to see this exact angle of the world. And in the evening, when the light gets thick again, I will stand at the fence and look at the lilacs along the line and wait for the bloom that tells me I can trust things to do what they do on their own time. If they bloom late, I will let them. If they bloom early, I will not tell them about last year. If they do not bloom at all one season because the frost forgot forgiveness, I will feed the soil and wait, and that will be its own kind of bloom. I place my palm against my own front door sometimes when I come in from the yard, just long enough to remember the difference between a polite click and a lid. My door makes no sound that isn't ordinary. It closes. It opens. It keeps the weather where it belongs. It lets in my niece. It keeps out men who think the law is a rumor. It knows the weight of my hand without memorizing it. There are things I still want. More books than I can read in one winter. One more afternoon with my sister, where we say the unimaginative things that become monuments when the person is gone.
A roof that makes tiny threats when it rains in sideways sheets. The courage to keep saying the simple sentences out loud. No, I want this. I am not a lock you can test to see if your key works in it. I wash the mugs. I put them upside down on a towel. I leave them there dripping and shining in the light that finds its way through my kitchen window at exactly the angle I like. I go to the porch and sit in the chair that belonged to my mother, and before that to a shed, and before that to a tree, and now to me. I wait. For what? I couldn't tell you in a way that would convince a person who needs proof stamped in the corner. I know only that waiting feels different now. It feels like a woman who doesn't expect the person coming up the walk to bring anything but themselves. It feels like a porch that knows how to meet a footstep. It feels like a house that is not for sale. It feels like a life that has been reclaimed without turning mean. Somewhere, a hawk tilts its wing. Somewhere, a girl with a scholarship packet sits at a table and reads a sentence out loud and believes it with her whole throat. Somewhere, a man with a drill sets it down and wonders why, for the first time, it feels heavy. Somewhere, a woman writes, "Today I told the truth and nobody died," and underlines it twice, and that is both a joke and a record. I stand. I go inside. The kettle will need lighting again. The night will need a bed. My hand touches the door and it closes with no drama at all. A click, like a clock, right on time.